My name is Michael, and the story I'm about to share has been passed down to me by my father countless times. I should mention up front, my dad is a deeply religious man, the kind who doesn't give much thought to the supernatural. Back in the late 80s, my dad and his buddies often roamed the trails near the waterfall behind our farm. Sometimes their hikes would take them close to the highway. One evening, out of sheer curiosity, they opted for an unfamiliar route that led around a neighboring property, hoping to catch sight of the wildlife, deer and other large creatures that weren't commonly found in our area. After emerging from the farmland and into the dense woods, they stumbled upon something out of a nightmare. An ancient cabin, decaying and forgotten. The structure loomed before them like a fragment pulled straight from the reels of an old horror movie, its warped and splintered wood creaking under the faintest whisper of wind. By their best guess, it had been erected sometime around the late 1930s or early 1940s, but the years had not been kind. Time had gnawed at the structure, leaving it bruised and weathered, with portions of the roof caving inward, allowing streaks of pale moonlight to filter through the gaps. Driven by curiosity and the unshakable pull of the unknown, the group exchanged glances, silently agreeing to investigate further. With hesitant hands, they pressed against the sagging wooden door, which gave way with a groaning protest, swinging inward on rusted hinges that squealed as if voicing their disapproval. The interior was a canvas of chaos and mystery. Latin inscriptions, scrawled in uneven, jagged lettering, slithered across the walls like creeping ivy. These were no ordinary markings. They seemed ancient, deliberate, holding a weight that pressed down on the air, suffocating and oppressive. Despite their efforts, not one of them could decipher the twisted phrases that looped around the room like an incantation frozen in time. The unsettling Latin, however, was not the only thing that caught their attention. Scattered among the archaic text were bold, crude graffiti scrawled in English. The very thought sent shivers racing down their spines. The words were unsettling, but the real horror lay in the symbols that accompanied them. My father, even now, decades later, swears by what he saw that night. Some of those sinister shapes, twisted and curling like serpents, were not etched in paint or chalk, but in something far more visceral: blood. He is unwavering in his conviction. To him, there was no mistaking it. The dark maroon stains, crusted against the wooden panels, whispered stories of rituals long forgotten. The texture, the iron-rich scent that lingered faintly even after years of abandonment, and the distinct way it had dried and cracked. There was no room for doubt. Standing there in that oppressive space, surrounded by the weight of something inexplicable, they felt the undeniable certainty that whatever had transpired within those walls had left an indelible mark. The cabin's interior was claustrophobic. The main room barely had space to breathe, and the stairs leading to the second floor felt suffocatingly narrow. As they ascended, they had to press their shoulders to the walls just to squeeze by. At the top, a cramped landing veered right, leading into what resembled an attic-turned bedroom. Chains dangled from the walls near a circular window, all marked with the same disturbing symbols they had seen below. Footsteps. They were faint but deliberate, climbing the stairs behind them. My dad and his friends spun around, but the stairway was empty. The footsteps persisted, echoing like the click of heels against the wood. Panic seized them with an iron grip, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last. Convinced that someone among them was orchestrating a cruel prank, they scrambled down the narrow staircase, footsteps thundering against the aged wooden planks. Breathless and wide-eyed, they scanned the room below, but the stillness remained undisturbed. Shadows stretched long across the creaking floor, yet not a single trace hinted at an intruder's presence. Desperation guided their eyes to the ground, hoping to catch the faintest sign. A footprint, a scuff, anything that might explain the unexplainable. But aside from the overlapping patterns of their own shoes, the surface lay pristine, as if time had frozen in that eerie cabin. Determined to peel back the layers of this unsettling puzzle, I later cornered each one of them in private, hoping that isolation might coax inconsistencies or exaggerated retellings from their memories. Perhaps one of them would laugh nervously, hinting at embellishments or fabrication. Yet, to my astonishment, their testimonies mirrored one another with chilling precision. Every pause, every flicker of hesitation reflected across their accounts like reflections in still water. It was as though the ordeal had branded itself into their very consciousness, leaving no room for error or distortion. Not content to let fear dictate their actions, they decided to confront the woods once more, this time armed with resolve and the certainty that fear could not dictate their path. Approaching from the eastern edge, they embarked on a trail that veered far from the cabin, certain that altering their course would lead them away from that cursed place. But no matter how far they ventured, the forest itself seemed to bend reality around them, funneling their steps back to that familiar porch. The trees whispered secrets they couldn't decipher, branches clawing like unseen hands eager to guide them toward inevitable confrontation. My father would later describe it with an unsettling calm, as if recalling a nightmare best left in the shadows. He said it felt as if the very ground beneath their feet held a will of its own, the cabin exerting an invisible force, an unnatural magnetism that denied escape. It wasn't simply coincidence nor the failure of their sense of direction. The compass, steadfast and unyielding, confirmed their heading. And yet, impossibly, the cabin re-emerged before them, standing defiantly as though it had never left their sight. They circled endlessly, exhaustion gnawing at their resolve until fear overtook reason. Though her features remained indistinct, the cavernous blackness of her eyes gleamed like oil, locking onto them with unrelenting intensity. No one dared breathe. Even as she drifted away from view, the rhythmic creak of footsteps on the stairs echoed within the stillness of the house. Panic finally shattered their paralysis, and they fled without looking back, plunging headlong into the forest. Every snapping twig or rustling leaf behind them sent waves of dread coursing through their veins, each sound amplifying the feeling that unseen eyes followed their every move. Only when the highway stretched before them, 3 grueling miles from the cabin, did the oppressive weight of being hunted begin to ease. Yet even as their homes came into view, the unease never fully lifted.
Moments later, his scream pierced the air, sending everyone rushing to his side. He swore he had glimpsed her again, that same spectral woman, standing at the edge of the woods, eyes burning like coals through the kitchen window. The oppressive dread returned in full force, wrapping around the family like an unshakable fog. From that point on, paranoia found a permanent home among them. They half hoped to find it reduced to rubble, erased from existence. But as they approached the clearing, the house loomed tall and unchanged, as if untouched by the decades. Fear triumphed over their need for answers, and they turned back without daring to cross the threshold. From that day forward, my father's cousin flatly refused to speak of the cabin, his silence as resolute as his unwillingness to laugh at my father's jokes about returning. On more than one occasion, I entertained the thought of tracking the place down myself, curiosity tugging at me like an itch begging to be scratched. But logic and the risk of legal repercussions held me back. The possibility of encountering something inexplicable weighed heavily, deterring even the most adventurous impulses. Some mysteries, I reasoned, are better left undisturbed. Still, the haunted expressions of those who had stepped foot inside that cabin lingered with me, a sobering reminder that the unknown often carries far more weight than a ghost story whispered around a campfire. If this story gave you chills or made you wonder what lurks in the forgotten corners of the world, leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more eerie tales and mysterious encounters.